So welcome, Angela.
Thank you.
Angela is going to be speaking today about learning all about remote viewing, and she's going to be talking about some case studies. She's a psychic and a remote viewer, known as RV. It's trained. They are trained in a mental faculty that allows an individual called a remote viewer to describe a target, location, event, or object that is hidden from normal senses by distance, time, or other shieldings. A remote viewer learns to focus his or her subconscious on a picture in an envelope. Then, in a sequence of standardized steps, the viewer the viewer records information about the target in an organized format as if written words and sketches. So Angela Ford had worked with the FBI, the Army Intelligence, and the Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington for 9 of these years. She worked as and participated in the DIA's psychic phenomenon program called Stargate and worked as a remote viewer. In 1999, in 1999, Discovery Channel aired a reenactment of a case at Angela Cell for the U.S. Customs. Scott Carmichael, a former DIA investigator, wrote a Kindle book called Unconventional Method, describes how Angela used her abilities and helped him apprehend an Australian spy. She was written about in Angela Jacobson's book Phenomena, and she appeared in CBS Sunday Morning in 2018. So right now, Angela, you have the stage for 25 minutes.
Okay, I guess I want to know if there's, first of all, if there's any questions for people to ask what remote viewing is before I start. Remote viewing was a term remote viewing to me means ESP, extrasensory perception. However, the word remote viewing was coined by two parapsychology researchers at Stanford Research Institute called Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. And back in the 70s, early 70s, in the late 1960s, in the early 1970s, they were studying Chinese children. They were getting reports or scientific reports from parapsychologists in China that Chinese children had the extra sense. They had precognition abilities. They could see in the future. And whenever they would translate the Chinese to the English, what they were reporting is that these children see remotely, they view remotely. So the scientists coined this word remote viewing, and the people that did remote viewing was known as remote viewers. Well, back in the late 60s and the 1970s, there was a gentleman at the CIA who he was interested in parapsychology research because he received his doctorate's degree at Duke University, and his fiance's wife worked for a parapsychology team at Duke University called Rhine and Rhine. And he was getting his doctorate's degree in, I think, physics. And he became interested in parapsychology because of his future mother-in-law. So when he started working for the CIA, he funded Stanford Research to look into, is it viable as a intelligence collection tool? Also at that time, there was a man that worked for Dr. Verona who was looking at what the other countries were doing in parapsychology research. At the time, there were reports that the Soviet Union was doing quite a bit in the parapsychology realms. So they went to Congress and they asked for money to put money into research and to find out if people could be used as remote viewers as a collection tool to spy or whatever. So what had happened was there was a general that was the head of Army Intelligence, and he more or less was picking people who he felt he had the ability that would become good remote viewers. And I was working for the Army Intelligence. I was working for this general at the time, and he knew I had the ability And so that's how I got into the program, and I was in the program for 9 years. In remote viewing is it's almost like it is. It's you put a picture in an envelope, and you ask the remote viewer to access and describe the picture in the envelope. And that picture can be anything. They trained us. The training targets were easy. They were mostly outdoor pictures. We had to describe, were we looking at a building? Were we looking at a tree? Were we looking at water? Were we looking at a mountain? And then after we were trained in the basics, then they took us into military type targets. Were we looking at an airplane? Were we looking at a submarine? And then they took us into an operational mode. And then at that point, we were put into operations, and we more or less had to figure out what was, they would put us against if we could locate hostages in Lebanon. We did a lot of drug interdiction. We did Soviet targets and what they were doing. I think we were able to access their first nuclear submarine that they built. So the program was always a very political hot potato, because we always had to go to Congress and ask for money, but we had some strong support from Congress, and we had some people in some high levels of government that supported us. But over time, these people either retired or they moved away, and so we lost our support. And at that time, we were just being badly managed, and so they decided to close the program in 1995. But the question was, it was always felt like we didn't make an impact, or that, but they felt like that it really didn't prove that much. But I think we did do a good job, because anytime analysts in the intelligence community couldn't get a problem solved, or if they tried other collection methodologies, they would come to us as a last resort. So we were able to find hostages, locate fugitives, and we worked with some Soviet sites. Does anybody have any questions?
They're listening. Continue.
What?
They're listening.
And then what happened was the Soviet Union fell in 1991, or 1991, and that opened the way, because of the fall of the Soviet Union. It enabled, we had a man who was a scientist as a contractor, and he went over to the Soviet Union, and he met their people, the scientists who were doing certain things. And so it's sort of like the door opened when the Cold War ended, and we started to find out what the Soviets were doing. They were finding out what we did. And so there were travels back and forth, and then eventually there were books written on. And in 2015, we were invited to the Soviet Union to meet their psychics and their people. And they used their psychics much differently than the way we were used. Their psychics traveled around with their leaders. They traveled with Gorbachev and with Yeltsin. They were with them to. They traveled with them. Their viewers were highly thought of, where we were sort of, we were laughed at times from people who didn't believe that we had the ability. So I felt so. And they also like to use natural psychics. And I know that when I worked in the U.S. in our program, they thought that they could train people to be psychic, and the military officers would sometimes bring in people that they thought that they could train, and you can train a person up to a certain level. But what we found is that if you have the natural ability, you can take the you can go a step further. You can find people, you can discuss health statuses. It's more than a natural psychic can do more than maybe what a trained remote viewer can do. But that was but the Army always thought they could bring people in and train them, and you can up to a certain level. I was asked to um, I was asked to go on CBS Sunday Morning News, and the Discovery Channel did a reenactment of one of the cases that I solved. The U.S. Customs had a fugitive. There was a man that worked for U.S. Customs. He was a customs agent, and he was I guess he was he was working in drugs. And what he did is he took the drug money and he went away. Like, in other words, he turned against customs and he took a large amount of money and then he fled with the money. And he was on the TV, he was on the 10 most wanted list. And because there was a TV program, the 10 most wanted, and he was on that list. And because it was a TV program, that project did not fall under intelligence. It was more or less like an open so it wasn't a secret project because it was on television. And so we got a call from US Customs, and they asked if we could find this gentleman. His name was Charles Jordan. And they asked if we could find him because they wanted to find him. And of course, it's a police agency, and they get upset if one of their own turned on them. So they really wanted this guy, but they could not find him. So they asked us, the psychic, the remote viewers, if we could find Charles Jordan. And I said that he was in a place called Lowell, Wyoming, Lowell. And when we looked on the map, there was a place in Wyoming called Lovell, Wyoming, Lovell. And I said, well, that's close enough. So I said he was in Lovell, Wyoming. Well, when and the other viewers had him in Florida and the Bahamas. So when our management went to Customs, and they said, the person that they said that I was good at locations and finding people and things. So they said that he was probably in Lovell, Wyoming, and Customs people said, oh, he would never be in Wyoming. He would be in Florida. He wouldn't be in Florida, in Wyoming. Well, so we let the project go. And about 6 weeks later, they asked me if I would work the project again. So I did. And I said that he was 100 miles west of Lovell, Wyoming, and he was on the move, and that if they were to find him, they should search for him. And I described an Indian burial ground. And so when our management went back I said he was traveling west of Lovell, Wyoming. And I explained an Indian burial ground. Well, when our management went back 6 weeks later to Customs, they said, well, our best source said he's moving west of Lovell, Wyoming. And the customs people said, as we are speaking, Charles Jordan is being apprehended 100 miles west of Lovell, Wyoming. So we asked, how did he? Apparently, what we were told was that he was visiting the Yellowstone National Park, and there was a security guard at the Yellowstone National Park that saw him and reported him. And we assumed, because he was on the 10 most wanted list, that the security guard found him. So our agency and we didn't take any credit for it. Well, back in and then this must have been in 1989. Well, in 1995, the BBC got a hold of the Charles Jordan story and how a psychic found him. So they came, the BBC came over here from England and they did a reenactment of the case. Well, while they were filming the reenactment of the case, the U.S. Customs gentleman was there, the one that we gave the information to, and we said, yeah, too bad. So I don't know. As we were talking, I don't know what happened, but my ex-boss, and I said something to the effect like, we didn't get credit for the case, and the customs man said, "Are you kidding?" He said, what happened was, as soon as I said he was in Lovell, Wyoming, see, and they went in customs, and the FBI wouldn't go look for him. And what my boss was trying to tell these people, it's an isolated area. Can't just send somebody up and start looking for him. But what we were told during the filming of the case was that after I said he was in Lovell, Wyoming, about a week afterwards, Charles Jordan sent his mother a picture of himself. And I guess the picture was to tell her that he was okay, he was alive, and that he looked well. Well, in the picture, there was a truck, and the truck had Wyoming license plates. So when Customs saw that, after I said he was in Lovell, Wyoming, they decided to go up and start looking for him, but they did not tell our agency that. And what had happened was and they said that we actually did get, I guess it was years later before we found out that they actually did act upon the information because of what we said, but we didn't know that. We just thought we did a good job. And so that's what I did. I was also able to help locate hostages in Lebanon during the time that Terry Anderson and Terry Waite was there. And I also helped identify Gaddafi's chemicals. I don't know if you remember the Gaddafi, whenever they thought he did have a chemical weapons plant, or he had a plant that they suspected of making chemical weapons. And we did some work on that, but that's the kind of work that I did. Not a lot of people, not a lot of psychics can find things, locate things.
People call you now to personally find things, whether it's an animal or a person or
sure.
keys.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Lost keys. I actually know somebody yesterday. She can't find her car keys for 3 days. She's stuck at home. And
I know.
I saw it. I saw it on the floor. And I asked her, I said, I see wood. Do you have wood floor? She goes, yeah, the whole house. I said, it's on the floor in the corner under a window. She goes, okay. And I don't know, but that's kind of what I saw. I was like, oh, maybe I did it.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
I know it's so hard because sometimes it's the energy. Like if somebody loses, say, a ring, it may mean the world to them, but it means nothing to me. I mean, there's a difference between finding a dead body and maybe finding a dead there's an energy difference. So it's just an energy thing. And sometimes if that signal line or the it can really stimulate you to do it. But I can remember one time, I mean, a lot of people will call me up like, I lost this, I lost that. And sometimes it's just difficult to do. But I remember there was one woman that would call me up from California, and she said, I lost this, can you find it? It would be something small, and I'd tell her, and I'd never hear from her. And then about a month later, she would call and she'd say, hey, I lost this, can you find this? And then I would tell her where it was. And these weren't big objects. They meant, one was a scarf. I don't know what it was, just nothing much. And then she would keep calling me. And finally, and every time she lost something, and it was within months apart, I said, oh, I don't know if I can do, I don't, sometimes one time I said, I don't know if I can do this one. She said, are you kidding? She said, you found everything I've asked you to find. And I didn't even know that. She wouldn't even call me back to give me the feedback. But there is, I mean, there, if someone's missing, or if someone's missing, of course, it's of a more serious nature. So it's sort of like that. It's a more stimulating energy, I think, than somebody losing car keys. But I mean, not that I can do it, but sometimes I just don't have just the excitement, I guess.
Can you identify if the dog was, found or stolen or dead? You know?
Yeah.
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 Oh, cool. Awesome. Good to know. That's a whole nother business. Finding.
Yeah, and I know people that do nothing but locational stuff, like dowsers. Um,
Like what? What do they do with them?
the dowsers. I know people that are professional dowsers, and that they find dead bodies. I mean, they just go out and missing people when they get calls. Now, dowsing is something I've done, but I don't think that dowsing is my specialty. But some of these dowsers are just, they get calls all the time.
Well, I like dowsing. I use my pendulum too. I'm really into.
That they use pendulums.
Yeah, they're using pendulums.
Yeah,
No kidding.
they
Well,
use pendulums.
pretty good at that, man. Cool. Anybody have any questions with this fascinating conversation? You don't normally get to experience somebody who's done this kind of work. You're my first. Very interesting. Anybody have any questions? Julian, Carrie, Tina?
Yes, I do. I've been trying to make some food here, so I apologize. This was very powerful, and I just had an enlightenment after you were sharing there, Angela. And I'm just going to ask, what about with hit and run motorcycle accidents?
Hit and run and what?
Hit and run accidents.
I think you can remote view that.
My dad passed in 2010. Somebody hit him on his motorcycle. We don't know who.
Oh.
That was in July 2010.
And so you try to find, oh, sure. Oh, of course. You can, they would probably, that could probably be looked at.
Really? That's profound. Okay.
I mean, and the thing is that remote viewing is not 100%, and it's not perfect. So, I mean, we would work, but a lot of times we had misses, and a lot of times things didn't work out, but that's all part of it, I guess. When you go to a psychic, if you can get 95% correct, that's good. So, it wasn't perfect. And, we had to, you had a remote viewer viewing, then they had to come out and they had to report what they saw. So then you had somebody making up the report. And if that person didn't understand what you were saying, then they may switch around the information a little bit. And then by the time it's taken to the analyst who's working the problem, then that analyst may think, you may be saying something, but they may not quite understand it and look at it another way. So you have to be very careful. So it wasn't like the information was perfect. This was back in the 80s and 90s. We did not have computers. We were writing reports on typewriters and hand carrying them up into headquarters. We were working in Maryland, and then we would hand carry the information to headquarters in Washington, D.C., about 40 minutes away. So it wasn't always perfect, or sometimes, the viewer would say something, but because somebody didn't understand what they were saying, they would go a whole other way. And then it would come out like you should have listened to what the viewer said. Then a lot of times you had maybe 3 viewers saying one thing, one viewer saying something else, and nobody knowing which way to go. But since 3 viewers said the same thing, we'll go with what they said. And then the one viewer that was different, that viewer was correct. So there was a lot of learning. I mean, I think it was so, there was a lot of learning. There was a lot to learn. We made a lot of mistakes. Now they have like remote viewing. I know when the military came out, the military officers came out and they started to teach remote viewing. And I know that it's a big social thing. I mean, you can go on Facebook and find remote viewing groups. I had a guy from England contact me, Daz Smith. He has a big following in remote viewing. And now I work for scientists. I work for two scientists that do parapsychology research. And it's so refined right now. They let the computers pick the targets. They know what targets make, what pictures are very conducive for remote viewing. If you're in an operational mode, how do you make that picture conducive for the psychic? So there's been years and years and years of research and refinement that I think it's a lot better now than at the time I was working. At the time I was working in it, and I look back at that, I feel like that was the dark ages. Because now I'm working for scientists and they just more or less let the computer pick the picture. They don't know what the picture is. I don't know what it is. It's a double blind. And then if I get it, it can show, and actually too, these scientists, they have advisory boards. They have, even when I worked for the government, we had lawyers involved. We had, there were panels where people had to look to make sure that the viewer was not cheating. I mean, because it can be laughed at. And that if when they looked at what we did, they had to look at, were we told, was there cheating involved, or how did we get this result? So we had all of that oversight. We had a lot of oversight. A lot of people think that there's still remote, there's still the government's still doing something, and maybe it is. But I know at the time that I worked for the government, we had large amounts of money funneled through our program from Congress. We were remote viewers in an operational setting that had oversight. We had people looking at what other countries were doing. That was called foreign assessment. And we had researchers, parapsychology researchers who were scientists. So we had a full, robust program. Now, some people say, oh, I bet it's still going on in the government. It may be. They may take somebody and say, hey, come over here and tell us this, or can you tell us this? And that may be happening, but they still don't have the oversight, and I don't think people are getting paid to do it. So I don't know, but
thank you, Angela. Thank you, Angela. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here, Angela. We got what we're going to do next is we're going to be doing a panel. Either you can stay here on the main, or you can go into your room for Q&A. But I also wanted to see if you wanted to give away a door prize. And what you do is you write down a number on a piece of paper, and everybody writes in the chat the number. If you want to do like a 30-minute session would be awesome, or whatever you want to do. And the closest number to her guess will win. So if anybody's right now in Facebook or watching on YouTube, you have to be here in the room. Yeah. So honestly, this was very interesting. So even if you win this gift, you can always re-gift it to somebody. So think about, if you didn't win it, if you want it and you don't want it, give it away. Make someone else happy who can use her services. And if you also love this event, we do rely on love donations to keep this free. So give as your heart's desire. I have PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, everything. Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, Venmo, all that stuff. So, okay, so Angela, you wrote down on a piece of paper?
Yeah.
You want to hold it up and tell us what it is?
17.
17. We have a 15. We got a Erica Christian. Got a 15. Congratulations, Erica. Wherever you are. We just need to have your email, if you can write that in the chat. we will make sure that she gets it, or she'll write it down, or you can go to room number 2 and make arrangements with her to have to use your session in the future. So thank you, Erica. Congratulations, Erica. I mean, so let's see.
So do you want me to go to room 2 now?
No. Either you go to your room for Q&A, or you stay here for the panel.
Okay.